final mechanic I want to talk to you about is this teleport mechanic. Now, something that I actually haven't covered in detail yet, that maybe I should have earlier, is actually how the player spawns in the first place. The player has information down below about its spawn point. Actually, right here in the player controller script that I made. There's a bunch of settings you can change here, like the speed, the minimum speed you need for jumping. So, for example, if you want to have the player start running first before jumping, you can. This ground detection height is about how high off the ground you need to be before you determine that you're in the air. So sometimes 0.1 makes it kind of like weird to jump off slopes. So making this a bigger number would make jumping off slopes a bit higher. But be wary, the higher you make this, the more you kind of give the player the potential to do like weird glitchy things with the jumping. So you can play around with that. And the turn speed is self-explanatory. The jump force is how high you jump in and of itself. And this is just a toggle for that tells you when you are or aren't on the ground. But the thing that I want to focus on right now is the spawn point. You'll see that I have a spawn point object. Where did I put it? Where is it? Oh, I'm blind. Spawn point right here where the player is. If I move this spawn point, but leave the player where it is there, when I press run in my game, I'm going to see that I actually appear right where that spawn point is. Because the player knows, based off of the code, to enter the game at the spawn point location. So this is a very powerful thing. I could actually even make the player, if I wanted to, like spawn. Why don't we do it over here on the seesaw? Maybe a little bit like this. So wherever that spawn point is where the player is going to enter the world. So now that you know that, maybe we want to keep the spawn point at the start and in a fair place, but we could use another tool to kind of mess around with where the player ends up moving depending on what they touch. So I've made a prefab for you called a teleport wall, but of course you can make anything a teleporter. I'm actually going to squish this down a little bit just to make it kind of like a teleport panel, maybe for now, just over here. And the idea behind this object is that I can include a spawn point, a location in the world that I want the player to jump to when I touch it. So I could, for example, make this a level reset so that when I touch it, I get kicked back to the beginning, almost like I fell off. In which case, I can just use the basic spawn point I start at as the reference point. So now when I touch this wall, I spawn back to the beginning. This is a great obstacle that's really punishing for the player. What if I copied and pasted this, however? Oh, I didn't copy and paste it properly. Copy, paste, another teleport wall. Let's shift it over here. But instead of this spawn point, I created a different place for the player to move to. How do I do this? Well, the spawn point is actually just a really simple empty object. All it is a location. I can make another thing like this by creating it empty. I'm going to call this teleport location. And wherever I move this is now going to become the place the player teleports. Maybe I have a little Easter egg in my game or a little secret that allows my player to kind of skip to the end of the level and kind of bypass a lot of the obstacles. Let's stick it right at the very end edge over here. So I got this teleport point, and now what I can do is with this player teleporter script selected, I can choose the teleport location as the spawn point for the teleportation action. So now when I press run and the player touches this, the player warps, teleports to that far location in the world. I can create as many different teleport locations as I want and customize things that I touch to teleport me there. For example, I could change this spinner to have, well, from my scripts, inside now, you can always add component here and just search for the script if you remember its name. But here I have my player teleporter. There it is showing up. Hit enter. And maybe I make the point I teleport to actually, well, for this here, maybe I actually want to change this from providing a force that knocks my player around to actually just sending my player back to the beginning of the level. So let's take my initial spawn point and stick it in here. And now I've kind of changed the behavior of this spinner. If I spawn it, when I touch it, it sends me back to the start of the level because it has that teleport functionality. But it also still applies the force, so maybe that's a little bit too janky. That time it hit me and it actually didn't collide with it properly before I teleported. So maybe not the greatest example, but you kind of see how I can combine things together to start creating some maybe customized things as a prototype and try to figure some things out in my game. In the next and final tutorial, I'm going to show you how to end your levels and move on to consecutive levels once you're done.